So in this module, we're going to cover monopolies. Monopoly. So in the last module, we talked about perfectly competitive markets. This is where there are many firms and many consumers, and either the individual firms or the individual consumers could affect the market price, right? The market price was determined by the big supply-demand curves, and we had the individual firm kind of independently kind of taking that price as given and just picking their quantity. Now with monopoly, we only have one firm. The entire market is just this one firm. So this is a market with just one firm, or one firm selling their goods and or services with no close substitutes. So the first thing we need to talk about, now that we kind of understand the monopoly is just a market with just one firm, is why these monopolies might come about, why they might arise. So why do monopolies arise? Why do they come about? We can think of kind of maybe three reasons why we can get monopolies. We can have markets with monopolies. The first is that maybe a single firm owns all of a key resource. So if one single firm, kind of owns all of a key resource in the production of a good or service, they can kind of pretty well operate as a monopoly. We see this with firms like, an old example would be something like Alcoa with bauxite, or maybe De Beers with diamonds. They have such large volumes of diamonds, and they stick them in vaults to keep the prices high and things like that. And so they pretty well own this key resource in the production or the selling of diamonds. And Alcoa is kind of bauxite. So that's one reason why we might see monopolies in certain markets, is that one firm kind of just has all the resources needed to produce the good. The second is that sometimes governments gives a single firm sole rights to sell. So maybe you need like some kind of, government regulates certain industries, and in some industries they might only give one firm the ability to sell this good or service. We can think of that if we, in terms of like licenses. So to operate as a lawyer or to be a doctor, you need to get a license. And the licensing boards are monopolies, right? The only way that you can become a doctor in Ontario is if you have a license through as far as I understand it, through the OMA, right? So the Ontario Medical Association. So they're a monopoly of this, of doctors, in terms of being able to allow people to practice medicine. So patents as well. So sometimes patents will give a firm sole rights to produce and sell things for some given period of time, right? So they're pretty well operating as a monopoly, because the government's saying, no, you came up with this new product or this new way of producing something. You're the only one that gets to use it. You have a patent on this. If it's a new good or service and other firms can't sell it, then they're going to operate as a monopoly for a while if it's a different service. And the third reason why we might see monopolies arise is going to be kind of natural monopolies. And with, maybe I'll just say natural monopoly. And so what a natural monopoly is, sometimes there's huge fixed costs. So this is where a single firm can produce at a lower cost, can produce the market quantity, I don't need a comma there, at a lower cost than several firms. So there might be like large fixed costs or startup costs. Think about this graphically, this idea of a natural monopoly. We can kind of draw a little diagram over here. And so what's happening in these natural monopolies is that, you can have a demand curve down like this, but what's happening is that we have the average total cost. You have like large economies of scale. And so the average total cost is falling along like a huge period of quantity. So maybe our average total cost curve looks like something like that, and then it eventually goes up. And so here, if, this is how much we produce, this would be the cost of production. So if you have several firms and they split up this market and they each produced this smaller amount, this would be the cost of production for, let's say, I'm just going to put S there. But a single firm producing the entire market quantity, not that this is necessarily the market quantity, this natural monopoly, they could produce the whole quantity for the market at a lower cost per unit. So it might make much more sense in some industries where there's like large economies of scale, or there's large fixed costs, or there's large startup costs, for one firm to kind of dominate the market. And so maybe you could think of things like electricity, or when we had landlines for telephones. It would make more sense just to have one company have put up all the electricity lines and things like that, rather than have several companies all putting up their own electricity lines and things like that, or all their own telephone wires to compete against each other. It might make more sense just for one firm to do all of that.